now, hey, my identity is to help people to the best of my ability, but I've found for me, it's actually just being like an all-star listener. And then that way the information that I can give to them actually makes sense for them.
3, 2, 1, go. It's 1998. I'm a junior in high school.
I was 3. I'm just kidding.
Wow.
I'm just kidding. I think I'm like 5.
Yeah, way older. There's a field trip to the Kimball Art Museum, and I had never been there. And I would say to that point, did not know much about art, and so was really just going because there was a cute girl that was going too. And so, first of all, the building is beautiful. It has like these vaulted ceilings where the architect like tried to let the light in so it would shine on the paintings, but like not on the ground. But even that, I feel like I just totally blaze over. And I'm basically following this girl through the different art bays. And, she comes around the corner and, like do the little flirt thing and, like look at a painting and be like, this is stupid, right? But all of a sudden, I realized that I'm looking at a painting that I can't stop looking at. And it was Picasso. It was the first Picasso I'd ever seen. And he had several different, I come to find, periods or phases that he went through. And one of the periods was called like a cubist or his cubism phase. And this painting, because I'm a little lovingly OCD, was like very symmetrical. It was very angular. And I couldn't stop looking at it. It was really wild. And also, I'd never like seen any art like that. But what was even more interesting is that right next to that, it looked like a painting by someone from another century, definitely a different artist, and a completely different style. And I remember one of the curators came up and said, those are both the same dude. And I thought about that, and it totally changed like the field trip. Like I just couldn't wrap my head around the fact that this was a person that had reinvented themselves. One, the talent that guy had to have to not just be like a one-trick pony and be like, hey, I draw squares. That's what I do. But that if you do like the any type of investigation into Picasso, you realize that he went through a blue period because he was depressed. So it's like he only painted in shades of blue. He emerged from that and he had like a rose period where like life looked different to him because of what he was experiencing. And so he went through different phases. That art that we had on the wall was during his war period. It's called, Guernica. And it's this huge abstract art, but it's basically a representation of a Spanish town and like after they bombed it. It's like really wild looking. Anyways, all this to say, I was thinking about that the best artists, the best coaches have these different phases that they go through. They have these different periods that they go through. They're typically the best among us aren't stuck in one particular phase, but because their life takes different shapes and because the experiences they have are different, they also reflect that in the way that they are an artist. We could say the same for fashion. We could say the same for music. And I think the same applies with coaching. So I thought it'd be cute, kitschy, if we just broke some of that stuff down. What do you think?
Oh, I can't wait.
Did you fall asleep in that
No,
monologue?
that was good.
Okay.
I was just thinking my school never went to art, like museum.
Yeah. Is there even a cool art museum in Houston?
Probably.
Probably, but we don't know about it.
Yeah. But if we're talking 1998, like I wasn't even in the States.
Yeah.
So couldn't tell you.
Right. Well, who are you?
Oh, thanks. I'll introduce myself. My name is Marcella Bruce.
Yeah.
I'm still getting used to that.
Have you said, well, we talked about your maiden name on previous episodes.
Mm-hmm.
I want, will you do me a favor? Will you? I want you to say Picasso's full name. Will you say it? It's right. Oh no. It's right here. Pablo Diego. Just read that. Will you read it in your native
Pablo
tone?
Diego.
Yeah, just the whole thing. It's like 3 lines long.
Yeah. Pablo Diego Jose. Did you know that Jose's my brother's name?
I did not.
Actually, he'd be so mad if I said it like that.
Okay. All right.
We're all super
from the top.
Yeah, we're all super. Real quick, we're all super Americanized.
Uh-huh.
But if I were to call him Jose, he'd be like, "That's not my name."
What would he say his name is?
Jose. Yeah. Pablo Diego Jose Francisco. Why is his name so long?
Keep going.
Juan. I don't even know how to say that next one. I don't think that's Spanish.
Just give it a whirl.
Maria de los. He has 15. Picasso. He has 15 names.
Yeah. I didn't discover that until this morning.
Why?
I don't know. But it really is. I just thought it'd be fun to hear it in your Guatemalan accent. Pablo Diego Jose Francisco de Paula Juan Nepomuceno Maria de los Remedios. How do you say that next word? Cipriano de la Santissima Trinidad Ruiz es Picasso. He makes Chance look like a punk with his 4 names, right? Anyways, that's neither here nor there, but it's just a fun little
quip.
Yeah, fun little trivia fact. Let's get into it. What do you say?
Ready.
Let's get into the periods, the style guide for the maturation of a health and fitness coach. Are you ready?
Ready.
Stage number 1 is what I call the fantasy stage. It's the stage where you're not actually coaching people, but you're very influenced by what's happening. And this stage is synonymous with also being a human and an athlete yourself. And so you're very gullible to everything that is popular. You'll ask people, be like, hey, what do you think about intermittent fasting? Or you'd be like, hey, did you see that trend where they're just doing like the Stairmasters? Or it's like, what are some other ones?
I mean, if we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
Well, I was even looking at like clear protein powders
Yeah.
Yeah. Creatine, gummies. Did you know that they come gummy form now?
What, creatine?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I didn't. I kind of like that.
Yeah. I mean, those are the 2 lately. And then, I mean, we always have like, which diet's best for me? Intermittent fasting, keto, paleo. Should I take semaglutide? Should I inject myself? Should I,
Yeah. And so in this stage, the potential is everywhere. The potential for you to find the secret formula. The amazing results, and here's the important part, that doesn't involve anything that you don't want to do. That's the first stage. And typically it's a contemplation stage. You're not actually doing anything, but the novice coach, before they've entered into anything, is very much influenced by everything. Now, for most of us, we don't stay in that stage for very long because we're so curious, we actually start to dabble. We start to dabble and we get some basic understanding of the principles around strength conditioning. But the next stage, I call the Fibonacci period. Much like Rain Man, much like A Beautiful Mind, you're equipped with tools of sets, reps, and movements, and you've been exposed just enough to some different combinations that you think that the secret lies in this perfect sequence, this perfect set, rep, rest, interval combination. And if you, like Indiana Jones, can just dig deep enough, that specific formula will be revealed to you.
Yeah. I mean, if you're not getting better, it's probably because your work to rest ratio isn't
probably
right.
not the right interval.
Yeah.
It probably wasn't the right number of reps. We looked at this piece of work and we say 21's that's not going to be the same as 20. You were way off. Marcella, what is someone that's in this period, the Fibonacci period, what do they typically wear?
Oh, I mean, you have to have, well, I mean, it depends. Like 2010, you'd have board shorts on. You'd have socks that went up to your knee. Obviously, the Reebok Nanos, you know. Now, you're looking at the guy with the knee sleeves, the rad shoes, the Biore shorts. That's when you know, like,
he has a whiteboard marker on him at all times because sparked with inspiration, he has to write down.
Don't forget the pocket that. Yeah.
He has to write down the sequence. And you know, we're being silly and playful, but I think we all have been in this place before where we're so enamored with, well, the potency of training that we think like, and probably we've experienced some results, right? That we think like, hey, maybe if I could figure out the exact words and the sequence of words in this sentence, then I could really find my true potential. Now, there's a period beyond that. Do you want to know what it is?
Let's hear it.
In that stage, in the Fibonacci period, you haven't really attached yourself to a movement. You haven't attached yourself to a cause, right? You've just started to investigate. You've just started to dabble. But the next period we call the Zealot Period. And the Zealot Period is marked by finding a particular style of training. And this style has produced some results for yourself as a practitioner and also for many of your disciples and followers around you. And quite typically, the Zealot Period is characterized by an inability to shut up about it. You can't stop talking about it. Yeah. And also, it can be marked by some very black and white thinking. Because you are so committed to your cause, all other causes become stupid. Yeah. Do you have any examples of that?
Oh, I mean, I can think of some good friends when they first started CrossFit where I'd just be like, yeah, this morning I was touching my toes. And they'd be like, yeah, well, I was doing toes to bar the other day. And then I'm like, oh, cool. And I was putting like, you know, groceries. And like, yeah, I love farmers carrying my groceries. Like I've had those conversations before.
And, you know, CrossFit's a great example, but I think anything that we put on a pedestal can be that way. Stretching's great. And as an extension of that, there's a whole faction of dogmatic yogis that say this is all you need.
Shall we talk about my spin phase?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So for you, your Zealot period included a spin style.
Yeah. Yeah. Indoor cycling. I even taught it. You know, I was like really into it. I was like, this is the way. You know, like couple tap packs, couple like don't look back, you're not riding that
never
way.
Surrender,
never die,
never back down. Did you give any like inspirational quips while you were?
Oh yeah, you know, like when you're on the stationary bike and you're going nowhere, and you just say like, hey, don't look back, you're not going that way, but in reality, like you're not moving.
That's
but
good.
You know, I tried really hard.
Your past is behind you. Your future's in front.
Yeah. But you're just riding in one place.
Did you ever do the Peloton?
No.
I haven't either. But I think those guys are probably world class at the entertainment factor, right?
Oh,
I mean, like really captivating attention. Because you got to think like spin and all that stuff. Like to your point, you're just sitting on a bike, not going anywhere, just doing the same thing over and over again. And I am so impressed by how they've taken that one little concept that's been around for a long time and made it like sexy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Made it like cool.
Yeah. And
let's turn the lights down a little bit. Yeah.
When it became sexy, that's when I realized I was in the wrong place. I was like, does this look sexy, guys?
Yeah.
When I do this. Anyways, moving on.
Now, it's easy for us to also cast shade during this period, but we've all been there. And I think it's an okay place to be, and here's why it's okay. you want to first learn the rules of anything, and you want to follow those rules to the nth degree, so you know what's possible, and so you understand its limitations. And I can be a silly goose about CrossFit or heck, a number of different things, right? Because I've followed those rules to an nth degree. And so if I was just looking at something abstractly that I had never participated in, I think it would be easy to say that I'm making fun of it. But most of the stuff, like I've been there, and I think it's okay. You know, we talk about identity a lot, and I think a part of being this phase is like fully putting on the identity of something. But the good news is that it doesn't have to be that way. I think maybe one last thing to say about this is it's become such a priority in the coach's life that they say things like, "This is the best hour of my day." And there's even that's even like a catchphrase or like kind of a tagline to be like, "Man, this hour that we're exercising is the best thing that happened to me today." Now there is an alternative period, and not everybody goes through this. It's kind of like you've never seen Back to the Future 2, have you? No. That's a real shame. Well, in Back to the Future 2, they go to an alternate reality. They travel back to 1985 from the future, but because things were manipulated in the long time past, now 1985 looks different. And that alternative reality isn't something that everyone experiences, but the period, to me, I'll call it like a nihilist period. And when you're dogmatic enough, or when you really, really participate in some movement, at some point, for some of us, you like all those, you get to a point where you're a little disenchanted. You get to a point where you think, okay, this has worked for me, but here's a few options. It's no longer working for me. Or this has worked for me, but it's not working for this person that I'm training in the way that it worked for me. And so you become very cynical. It's very easy to do that. And in this period, it's marked by sentences like this. You know, I wish people just do what I tell them to do. Or, you know what, I had to fire this client because they didn't do what I told them to do. And it can get dark. It can get to where you feel burnt out because a lot of the things that you believed in are being challenged. You ever experienced any of that, or seen anybody that's gone through something like that?
I've gotten to see it from the outside.
Mm-hmm. Just seen me go through it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Still support you.
Now, I think the problem with that, and the problem with all of these stages leading up to this final stage, is that we have things backwards. We have things backwards to say that whatever is happening in that hour is all that matters. Or when we are in that zealot period, we start to know some things. And so we think, well, clearly, if I just know more, like that's the answer. And in this period of disenchantment or disenfranchised, it can just challenge you to realize that it's not really about that hour. It's not really about you. It's not really even about that one thing by itself. And if you're lucky enough, which I don't think everybody is, I think for several of us, we stay in that zealot period, or we go from one thing that we're passionate about to the next. Oh yeah, I was doing CrossFit, but now I'm doing movement. Oh, I'm doing movement, but now I'm doing jiu-jitsu. Oh no, man, I'm cyclist now. No, I'm a rock climber. And you just kind of go from this thing to this thing to this thing, and you tell yourself, which is a very common sentiment as a human being, if I can just do this right on the other side of learning this, well, that's paradise. And if you're lucky enough, you realize that that's not really how life works. If you're lucky enough, you enter into what I call this emergence period. You enter into this period that we've had lots of conversations about. It's pretty much what this podcast is about. And that you realize that everything works together in a system. You've been knocked off your horse. You've been shown that there isn't one solution to everything. You yourself have probably exercised for a long time, and so you realize that what once worked isn't working any longer. And so you have this very humble perspective, and I think that's a key characteristic of this. There's no hubris. There's no pride in this period. But there's this humility in approaching this thing not called fitness, but called health, which you realize is a system. You realize it's all of these different dimensions and that everything is important. Everything is important, but nothing is like ultimately important. There's nothing that you can like prioritize as more important than the rest. And so that hour of the day is cool. And it's like, yeah, like let it be a good hour, but also let the other hours of your day be really good as well. And I think that's where I believe that's where we find ourselves. And as I look up, which I don't do very often, at the landscape of fitness, I see that there's a few individuals that are also coming to that realization. And that's why you hear stuff like wellness being thrown in there. It's why you hear mental health being thrown in there. And you're seeing this trend very slowly, very softly, that there's more than just one thing that's important. And that if that hour that we stress is really valuable, and I want to get the most out of the hour, what are all the other things that we have to do? And I'll land the plane with this. If that's true, then it changes what our job requirement looks like. Instead of being this specialist that's about entertainment, that's about sharing the gospel of one particular movement or way of training, that it's not really about the sets and reps, but that's just words that we use to write this really long narrative and story about what it is to thrive in all the dimensions of your life, then I think for us as guides, for us as facilitators, it changes the job description. Plan landed. What do you think about that?
Yeah,
you're a smart cookie. What do you got to say about that?
Talking through these different seasons reminds me like of exactly how I even got here and why we're even talking about this thing that we're about to talk about. But going back to me teaching spin, like my identity was to be like an encourager. Like I was like, I'm gonna like get these people to be better people by the words that I say. And then quickly learning like, hey, if I actually want to be impactful, being on a podium where everyone's just looking at me and I'm just spitting words at them was just not the place for me. Now I've seen other instructors do it really well, so there's nothing in the spin environment. But for me, I realized like I'm not accomplishing exactly what I want to do. But then I found myself doing the same thing, coaching a group CrossFit class of, hey, I'm just going to encourage you. But now I got the teaching aspect in there. So I was like, now I'm actually better because I'm not only an encourager, I'm also teaching how to do things. And then also being so obsessed with it, I was like, I'm also going to count your reps. And if you're, not doing your reps, like you're cheating and I'm going to call you out for it. And then to now fast forward where that isn't my identity and nobody actually cares how much information I have or, well, I mean, to an extent, right? But they don't want to hear that. And my encouragement needs to look different. My identity needs to look different. I need to be able to teach them differently. I don't need to be counting their reps anymore or even really checking their attendance anymore. Into now, hey, my identity is to help people to the best of my ability, but I've found for me, it's actually just being like an all-star listener. And then that way the information that I can give to them actually makes sense for them.
Yeah.
And if I can have a really good identity of helping them and helping them figure out their identity, then I know that we're going to be tracking in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think to be a good listener, you can be listening so deeply that someone's talking, and when they finish, you don't have anything to say. And I don't think that's what we're alluding to, right? It is having these tools at your disposal, and lots of tools across lots of domains, but not feeling the need to prescribe as soon as you're done listening. And also at the end of these conversations that we have, to allow them to lead, even though you may know something different or better, right? Which is a weird thing to wrap your head around. It's like, wait a second, I know more than them, and I have better solutions for them, but I need them to tell me what they think that they will do versus what I know is best. And the answer is yes. And if you can't wrap your head around that, you need to rewind this and watch it again, because it's absolutely true. And I think the low level, the Zealot, the Fibonacci periods are really marked by a disbelief that is true. And I think some of that, even back to like that magic period, you tell yourself like, well, this is a lot quicker of a process, right? Well, I'll just tell you what to do and you just do it. Oh man, wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice if it was just as efficient as that? But for human beings that have complicated lives, that have lots of facets, I'm convinced that there is no shortcut. And at once upon a time, we recognized and we realized like, okay, this is going to take not just one magic workout. It's going to take several workouts. It's going to take several years. It's going to take consistent application of this. I think you can make the same assumption, albeit it's a harder one, to say, yeah, for me to be a coach, this is a multi-year process. It's very slow, where even though I could just tell them the answer, like they have to come up to it on their own. But the last thing I'll say is I've been amazed at when you can, and this is going to sound a little crunchy, but it's not as crunchy as you think. When you can tap into somebody's subconscious, when you can get them tracking on the right train of thought and you can ask them the right questions, and you get past that layer of them saying what it is that you think they want you to hear, and they're speaking from a place of real authenticity of who they are, then a lot of times the answers that they surprise you with are way better than what your knee-jerk was for them. For example, having someone write out, not, hey, what did you eat for breakfast? But I want you to tell me the narrative of what nutrition looks like for you on a daily basis. Be honest, right? That's a creative process. It's not analytical. It's not, spreadsheets. It's like, hey, just tell me the thoughts and feelings that you have around nutrition. Just write me a little story. And you do that. And then when they finish it, you say, what do you think that story says about you? And they say it. Whatever those words are is, I guarantee, more powerful than anything that you could have said to them. And then you say this, what do you think you should do about it? And even though they're not an expert in nutrition, whatever they say is going to be a pretty good direction to follow. And that right there, I think, is a great example of what it means to be an emergent coach. Is probably a better word than that. But that's a painstakingly slow process. And I think most people, here's another lie that I probably said at some point, and I hear to this day. We come from a background of coaching people in a group. And I think there's this underlying lie that says if you can't handle everything in a group, you're not a very good coach, which is, by what we just talked about, like impossible. Like some of these things we're talking about is impossible to do in a group. And it's because as human beings, like we're constantly looking around to like, okay, is this person paying attention to what I'm doing? Are they going to judge me for this? I need to compare myself with this person, so on and so forth. So I think the model looks like a hybrid of lots of things that most of us have experienced in the past. And I'm not saying that we're going to be creating anything from scratch that's brand new. But what I get really fired up is it does feel like a recombination of things in a way that does feel like an original remix. And it's doing that with a different set of values. It's not to jump right into the entertainment world once again, or to be like, hey, this is the next thing that will really captivate your attention. But it's just stepping back and be like, I don't even care about that anymore. I care about your whole life being transformed. And if that's the case, this is a really different engagement that we're entering into.
And that's what has me so excited about the Institute.
Great segue.
Is the
Thank you so much for that.
step.
Because as I was talking, I was like, I don't even know what I'm saying. I don't know where I'm going. So thanks for that.
No, but the Coaching Institute, my favorite thing the Coaching Institute. One of my favorite parts that we start with is creating your identity as a coach. And we talked about all of Picasso's, season stages, styles. And at no point did we say Picasso is about artists. He just changed the way that he constantly did things. And there were styles of each of those that he took with him to become the master artist that he became towards the end. And I think that's what we mean by like these different seasons, is realizing, hey, that was really good. I'm going to keep that. I'm going to get rid of that.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep that. I'm going to get rid of that. I'm still going to wear board shorts, but maybe not the tall socks, whatever.
Yeah.
Right. And then we
Good
get
call.
to, And then we get to craft up and draft up who we want to then move forward being. Because if we have a really strong identity, then we're not hit with the pride issue of like, I know more than you. And then you can really start to help transform your clients. If you transform yourself first and you know confidently who you're going to be for these people, then you can confidently help them transform to be then confident people in the role that they are in, whether it's a dad, a business owner, whatever. So to start off with the internship, I mean, the first couple of weeks, like we just spend so much time talking about those different stages. And it fires me up to even talk about that.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody about this concept of health versus fitness, about, being enlightened to say, hey, you're not a know-it-all and you got to spend time with people and it takes time. And his response was, yeah, but if you're 21, 22, you just don't get that. And I beg to differ, right? Like we're meeting guys like Finn that is 22, tight skin, great jaw, handsome.
Looks like Prince Charming.
Looks like Prince Charming, but he's got an old soul, right? He's wise beyond his years. And so I think that this thing that we're talking about, it's applicable for everyone. And that's one of the things that I want to reemphasize about the Institute, about this process that we're going to start about a month from now, is that it's not an attempt to be another dogmatic flag that you get behind. Like, oh man, CrossFit's dumb, I do OPEX now. Or it's like, OPEX is dumb, I do active life. Or it's like, nah, man, I'm all about the ready state. It's like these things we're talking about, apply it to whatever. The only flag that I think we're flying is, well, it's a really boring flag. It's like, hey, we want to be in the transformation business instead of just the entertainment business, or instead of the fitness business. And if that's what we're claiming, it's not a quick fix. It's an immersive, long-term, like practice-based, decision by decision, very slow, laborious process, but I'm here for it. And what you said, like starting with identity, starting with the real ingredients for why you want to do this, because they will be challenged in this industry at some point in time, is exactly what we're talking about. It feels like overkill. We have found that it's the absolute right first step, because that's the foundation that everything is built upon. Most of us have parts of us that are insecure. And I think there's parts of us that are afraid there's been someone that's done something in the fitness industry that does look very shallow and superficial. And we're worried to be associated with that. We have parents that paid for our college that we turn around and we say, hey, I'm gonna go do this thing that I know you don't really understand, but it feels important to me. And it's attached to also something that we're passionate about just as individuals. And to unpack all that stuff and to be really clear on where your insecurities lie, to be really clear on what your fears are, to be really clear on the reasons why you want to do something, and to have somebody lovingly challenge those things to make sure that you're in the right place at the right time is something that I wish somebody had done for me. And most of the time when I'm evaluating, is this what I should be doing? The answer to that is, I want to do exactly what I would have needed at some point in time. And for most of the stuff we do, that's pretty like the rule of thumb and the heuristic that I'm thinking through. So identity is an important part. As far as this institute that we're beta testing in October through the end of the year, what are some other things that you're excited about?
Yeah, well, once you have, after you identify your identity, the reason why we do that is so that you can learn the tools to also do with your clients. Because then you know how to properly, one, assess them, and two, craft up a plan for them to be able to do this wellness plan you have for them long term, right? Like if I know who they want to be and where they are right now and the steps that they need to get there, well, then I can draft up the perfect plan for that. And so those are some of the tools that we'll talk about next. Once you can figure out exactly who they want to be, you can assess who they currently are, and then you'll know how to exactly program for them. Do they need a high intensity? Do they need a low intensity? And how to really tailor that to them. When it comes to nutrition, like, is it appropriate to tell them to eat the same meal, or do they have a wife who cooks for them, or a job that makes them eat out? Like figuring out what exactly their needs are. So after identity, we find the gaps, and then we'll figure out how to fill the gaps appropriately.
You know, it makes me think that in the old model of just being a fitness coach, a lot of times we judge people based on face value. And so you look at somebody and be like, okay, you know, do I think because they're smiling that they'll be an approachable person? You know, do they seem like they're in relatively good shape? Okay, maybe I can trust them as far as like, you know, helping me do the same thing. What we're alluding to here is also a different precondition for you to coach people's lives. And it's to say that before you get somebody else's shit together, you got to get your own shit together. And a tendency in the fitness industry is to be like, hey, look how great in shape I am, so my life must be awesome. And what we're saying is like, no, we really want you to be thriving, and at least not that, you know, this perfect life is possible, but you're aware of all of these things for yourself, and you do it for yourself before you have any inclination to turn around and coach someone else. And it's not one-dimensional. It is not as easy to measure. But I think a good way to summarize that is we want to make sure that before you can understand what somebody else's thriving existence looks like, you need to have made attempts for it on your own. You need to understand what your own limiting factors are. You need to understand how your life in this stage works as a system, and the things that you should be doing. And gosh, what an incredible concept. And once again, even if you don't end up coaching fitness, like there's no downside to going through that, right? There's no downside to this continuing education that we're talking about. I think a good way to demarcate this is there is a lot of transformational components that we want to lead with, and we want them to experience that. The ways that we'll unpack stories, the ways that we'll dig into hang-ups, reasons that we all get stuck, right? That's on the first end. And then on the back end, you mentioned it, but give us a little bit more detail about some of the nuts and bolts, like the things and the tools and the stuff that we're doing, like once we figured out the identity, purpose, values piece, like some of the things that we're doing around lifestyle.
We'll dig into not only nutrition, how they should train. We'll take a look at sleep and stress. Again, you can't call yourself a wellness coach if you're only talking about one thing, and that's fitness, right? So digging into all the other areas that make someone a whole and finding the right roadmap for them. The coolest part of the Institute is that we'll talk about you the entire time and give you tools to do those things for you. So digging into your own sleep, your own fitness, your own stress management, and then to create tools around that for you to then go and use. And so like you mentioned, it's fail-proof. Like whether or not you use it for someone else or yourself, like you're walking away with a lot of tools of how to continuously do life well, or what we'd like to say, becoming a little bit more resilient, right? Like everyone's going to hit certain parts of their life that feels challenging, and either be the hero or you're the victim. And these tools will help you choose which way to go.
Wow. Or the villain. I've been the villain a couple of times in my life. It's not a pretty picture. Well, that has nothing to do with the Institute, but still, you know, along the lines of all the tongue-in-cheek stuff we were saying about these periods, methods are many, principles are few, and everything that we want to go over, from behavior change to lifestyle modifications, all under this umbrella of change psychology and change adaptation. It's not a very sexy process, but it's also not a method that only works for some people. Like these things that we want to present, these tools and frameworks and systems, our hope is that it's incredibly valuable regardless of the way that you want to implement them. And so, yeah.
And I mean, one of the last things that we'll talk about in the Institute that just fires me up is the how to keep someone long term and how to continue to coach yourself long term. I truly on my way here was listening to a podcast that talks about the average length of engagement for a one-on-one coaching is only 9 months.
Wow.
And so to find a way to keep coaching someone long term means that once you create these, we'll say, systems with them, it's the testing, it's the retesting, it's the reevaluating, just like the seasons of coaching that we've gone through. I know at one point I was like, I don't eat anything that isn't paleo, right? And to say that's my lifestyle. My husband would kill me if I didn't let him have rice every now and then, right? So to say that system, hypothetically, right? He would never. But to say that system would work now in marriage, it wouldn't, right? So as your clients yourself go through different seasons in life, having someone continuously coaching every area to let you know, hey, we tried this, you're not here anymore, we need to do this, is what's going to keep them around long term. Doing that for yourself is what's going to keep you happy long term. You mentioned the season of life where we're everything sucks, nobody's listening to me, no one's doing what I say, right? The only way to combat that season is to know hey, if I'm hitting that point, the system that I have in place isn't working anymore. And so that's one of the last things that we'll talk about in the Institute is really, one, how to coach long term, and then two, how to coach yourself long term and how to keep changing, testing, retesting, creating new methods.
It's amazing. I'm really fired up. Hit everybody with the details here. And if I was listening to this and I made it through all of the Picasso analogies and I'm still here, what is it that I would need to know if I wanted to participate?
I mean, you'll need to apply, first of all. You'll go through a sales call process so that we can hear, one, more about you, and then two, to know if this is the right fit for you. We are only going to be taking 10 people, so we want to make sure that the people that do apply are the right fit and that will see value in this.
Yeah, and the dates to start are October the 2nd until, when is it over?
December 15th.
December 15th. So it's 10 weeks long. The cadence of this is a weekly telecourse. There's a online software that we'll use where we can interact. There's a ton of extra resources. There's these frameworks, forms, all the stuff that we use. We're sharing with those that are participating. There'll be some one-on-one coaching, obviously, in line with what we believe to be true, where each participant gets to be on the receiving end of that. And it's like there's a magic trip happening, and we're also telling you how the magic trick is working. So we're doing it on you, and we're also telling you, hey, these are the steps that we took you through.
Yeah, Mrs. Frizzle style, magic school bus.
Yes, great reference. You're more American than you
I
realize.
told you I'm Americanized. I didn't have a quinceañera.
That's a real shame. At the Arboretum here in Dallas, that's where they always take the quinceañera pictures. And I don't lie to my children. I tell them the truth for everything. But it's possible that the majority of my children think that those are real princesses that come through there.
That's incredible.
And I've never told them otherwise. They'd be like, "Is that a princess?" And I said, "What do you think?" They were like, "Well, she looks like a princess." And that's what we've gone with so far.
I know what I'm going to wear to the next dinner party.
It's a real shame that you didn't get to experience that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, who's to say I won't wear a nice fluffy dress next time I come over?
Who's to say you can't celebrate a quinceañera at
30?
That would be great.
Bring your own piñata.
That would be great. Well, what do you say we wrap it up? What do you say we... 10 people. Yeah. When this podcast is out, that'll be up and running. Basically, for the month of September, we're interviewing those that want to participate. And I don't think there's any downside. I've had some people that are way more experienced than me at fitness reach out to want to participate. And I've had guys that aren't even coaches yet that just have heard some of these components and be like, man, I think that would be a valuable use of my time. So if this is you, we hope that you'll join us. Thank you, Marcella, for listening to my rants, for helping me land the plane.
Shall we go paint?